Good morning, my friends, wherever you may be in the world. Today, Alan Clements here from the Sewell studio in Haiku, Maui, Hawaii, March 21, 2022. This is part 5 of a 6-part series, A World in Crises, Finding Meaning in the Madness. Tomorrow will be the last installation of this series. I'm going to take a short break and continue soon. I've been very much enjoying coming back into voice, body, communion with those people who choose to participate in this dialogue, this podcast, this live stream called As I See It. A few announcements to begin. Many of you know, some of you don't, that it's taken 2 years to produce a video book based upon a concept that I evolved over the last 20-some years called World Dharma, the fusion of art and activism with, in my humble way, decoding consciousness in context, beyond the ism, beyond the spirituality, the 2.0 of transformational intelligence. And I was blessed to be supported to film over the course of a week 37 8 to 30-minute video chapters that have been beautifully edited by Gemma McGovern and with subtitles and highlighted key points throughout these chapters, along with 61 1-minute long videos as essence daily or weekly, whenever one wants to be reminded of what I feel to be pure essence, inspiration on the practicalities of engaging Dhamma, world Dharma, freedom in context, to use as you wish. It's on Vimeo on demand. It was the only platform that we could find that offered subscription and streaming and purchase of a video book. And if you go to my website, alanclements.com, under books, you'll see a section called the World Dharma Video Book, a practical guide to the practice of Dharma art and mindful intelligence, finding liberation through living. Thank you from my heart for participating. I've also crafted, it's really a children's book, but it's also an adult's book called Tonight I Met a Deva, an Angel of Love. And it was birthed, if there was only one act left on earth, what would I do? And I said, distill the most important teachings that I've ever found in my life, the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, in poetic, rhyming, easily accessible, playful prose poetry for the mind of a child, not just children, but the innocence within every adult, that's receptive to making the vocation of living a priority over accumulation or things, and to bring artfulness, if you will, spiritual, mindful artfulness to the poetic of living inside of oneself, with one's communion with family and context to a world, and to dream. Wonderment is very important to me. So this book, Tonight I Met a Deva, which is the Buddhist word for a deity of high aptitude and an intelligence. And I'll be speaking more about that. And it's available on all the online retailers, Amazon worldwide, Barnes & Noble. It's in pre-order. Do a search or go to my website and look under the book section, and you will find Tonight I Met a Deva, an Angel of Love, and it's beautifully illustrated. The serendipity of mystical adventure came into fruition with these savant artists from England and America and from Mongolia who brilliantly, beautifully anointed the pages of this book with Dakini, celestial, Tibetan, Dharmic, Buddhist, mystical art, and it's magnificent. And I hope that you will acquire it and tell friends, give it as a gift, communicate with libraries and schools to help support the young people around the world in basic spiritual and mindful intelligence. So from my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in today. A simple talk, spontaneous, on slowing down as the basis of basic sanity. You know, I think it was R.D. Laing, the radical psychiatrist, who made the comment that insanity was a sane response to an insane world. And I think there's some magic in the simplicity of that bold statement. War to me is insane. Violence is insane. Domination is insane. Apartheid is insane. Racism is insane. Slavery is insane. All the ways in which life denigrates its sisterhood and its brotherhood and its animalhood and its environmentalhood, the ways in which we blindly take for normal and ordinary desecration, domination, and the ways in which we obstruct the inherent beauty in birth and the occupation, if you will, of a peaceful, mystical adventure through embodiment in time and space and the senses. And yet we have the insanity of the world that we see through the filters of media and the occupation of leaders to do what they do in the name of democracy, in capitalism, in blind domination. And would I do it differently were I in leadership? I would pray that I would. And I know that there are so many millions of people around the world who are completely at odds, completely confounded by what seems to be the idiocy of the elites in leadership. And yet we find ourselves occupying the same home planet, trying the best that we can to coexist within a world of violence and war and racism and denigration and disparity and homelessness and all the various things that we see every day. It's insane to normalize in any way what's going on in the world, ever. Much less in Yemen and Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, the city streets around the world, in Ukraine, in Russia. J.K. Krishnamurti once said, "It's no measure of success to be adjusted to a profoundly sick society." No measure of success to be adjusted to a profoundly sick society. I want to grow more and more uncomfortable with the insanity and the sickness and war and violence. I want to grow older with a greater conscience and dignity, to feel that I don't belong in any way to normalizing things that feel so foreign to my soul, to my spirit. I don't want to belong to the machinery of domination and capitalism and communism and socialism and totalitarianism. I don't want to be a commentator from the sidelines of my own comfort to the horrors of the front line of Burma, the tragedies going on in Sri Lanka, nations where I once lived that are falling not only between the cracks, that are becoming failed nations economically. Fuel, food, poverty that is deafening to the spirit, and the likelihood of no recovery in the foreseeable years based upon what's happening. Slowing down in the midst of the madness, finding meaning through purposeful, not just slowing down, but bringing a heightened quality of occupation to the immediacy of a felt environment, bringing a higher quality of occupation to the experiential immediacy of being in the environment of one's own chosen space, occupying one's own mind and body. The immediacy of that art form, call it yoga, call it meditation, a deliberate act. Living in the world of monasteries and meditation centers, and now in the world, we were taught the most simple teachings of occupying Dhamma in context. Dharma in action. What does that mean? To me, twofold. Understanding that wherever we go, we bring consciousness in the context of where we walk and move and fly and drive and occupy. And there, through the portals of the senses, we see inside and outside, and we must engage the confluence of the inner and the outer with mindful intelligence, confluence Dharma of the inner and the outer. And there we bring a discernment to release the mind from those states of mind that bring conflict and self-generated suffering, namely fear, greed, shame, worry, doubt, restlessness, ignorance, anger, blame, and all the ways in which we normalize the insanity of these states of compromise, as the Dalai Lama called them, destructive states of consciousness. To know those states of mind, to know them, and to further occupy them with the vigilance, a determined, patient, courageous, mindful intelligence, not to give life to them, to learn the high art of restraint and release. I see you, I accept you, but I do not want to participate in your behavior through thought, speech, and action. One element of the Dhamma, overcoming self-generated suffering or conflict. The occupation of seeing, feeling, and releasing states of conflict. High art, meditation in action, world Dharma in context. The other side, which is very magnificent for me, is learning progressively over the weeks and the months and the years of our lives how to become an artist of consciousness, a deliberately engaged practitioner, a yogi, a meditator, a savant, and of these states of mind are the ones that I wish to see, feel, discover, know, evolve, co-create, enhance, and bring to the forefront of my presence through the portals of the senses. And at the confluence of the inner and the outer, I want to beautify that confluence, the good, the true, and the beautiful, being an artist of the mind, a meditator, learning Dhamma, what we call Dharma or Dhamma literacy, hearing, feeling, knowing, tasting, diving into the direct experiential feel of the characteristic the manifestation of generosity, moral integrity, renunciation, wisdom, energy, the characteristics of discernible patience. What an art form it is to know that you can take from the color of consciousness the energetic of patience, the ability to stay in proximity often to difficulty with purpose and meaning and learning, and decathex, let go of fear and worry and anxiety and stress. And although I am somewhat virginal to this experience, I want to be patient, empowering learning over everything. Truthfulness. Who has the ability to bring the color, the cognitive color from the palette of interiority? Yes, this is truthfulness rather than deception. This is honesty rather than coercion. This is transparency rather than manipulation. And to know that you have, like you look in the mirror and you see a familiar face, you look in the mirror of the mind with mindful intelligence, and you see and you feel and you know the characteristic, the felt experiential manifestation of the energy of honesty, of truthfulness, and you develop a type of anatomical, biological, existential life force within that characteristic. So it's developmental. It strengthens over time with character, with purpose, with resolve, and you fortify truthful, patient intelligence with ethical resolve. These are just words, but meditators know, yogis know, mothers often know, Dharma artists of conscience and consciousness know that life is a felt experiential relationship to the flow of consciousness through the senses into the world at the confluence of the eye, the ear, the nose, the body, the tongue, and the sixth sense, the mind door. Slowing down, feeling an expanded immediacy, taking the forward leaning momentum, often the neurotic momentum forward. Strange how this force called the life force of conditioning seems to be pushing us forward. Often unknowingly, we live in an unrecognized speed belt. Things speed up in time. Faster internet, faster driving, faster flying, faster eating, to get through, only to get through to die. Cliched as that is to say, a yogi or a meditator or a lover or someone who wants to occupy the timelessness of a sacred poetic moment. You're with a special individual. You want to take the watch and the clock off your arm or your soul. We entered the monastery, they said, in many poetic and humorous ways, take the watch off your arm, take the clock off your mind, and occupy now time immediacy and slow down. It's so amazing, so frightening, so invigoratingly frightening to be in a situation where getting somewhere, although you do show up on time, but you leave a lot earlier to take the haste out of that journey. Slowing down. There was a period of time where we were encouraged in the monastery to not hurry up and get through our meal in order to get back to the meditation hall to meditate on time. It's amazing to see that when you reach for a mouthful of food and you look at the food and you lift it to your mouth and you open your mouth and you place it on your tongue and you lower your utensil and you just simply sit there and occupy the feeling and the sensation and the impulsation to chew and taste and to feel and anoint that succession of sensations with states of consciousness that bring dignity and integrity and gratitude to simply that one mouthful of food. And you notice, those of you who know what I'm speaking about, you swallow the food and there's that impulse to reach again, to get through the meal in order to get back to the higher priority of being enlightened in the preferred posture of sitting meditation. Preferred postures. My mother, in the last years of her life before passing away at 96, I want to use the word, was confined to a wheelchair. It's a very pejorative way to talk about a circumstance of naturalness. She was confined to a prone position on a bed because she could no longer even get out of bed. I remember her taking my hand, gnarled as they were, with chronic decades of arthritis. And Mom and I were very close. And she said, "Alan, you're a lot younger than I. Go forth. Go outside. Feel the light. Love. Live. Adventure while you can." And as simple as those words were, an invocation of her heart, they echoed out as a type of life-supporting prayer, gift, hymn, sonnet to look around and to feel and take this preferential haste and this need of unrecognized desiring for an outcome out of the future and occupy life by slowing down. I'll close here. During the monastic years, my dear friend Ukundala took me to an old age home. And we walked in and there were 3 elderly women. And he introduced them, and the woman in the middle was his mother. And they must have been in their 80s. I was 29 or 30. We began to talk in my fledgling Burmese, and she spoke fluent English. And she says, "My son tells me you're a monk, and I'm very curious. Are you happy?" A very interesting, intimate question. The Burmese are very frank. "He tells me you're a monk," and I kind of recognized, wow, she couldn't see that I had a shaven head and that I was wearing the mahogany robes, that I was actually a monk. But I didn't really put it all together. And I kind of said to myself, am I happy? And I thought to myself, well, you know how us Buddhists are, we're always in proximity to happiness, but never quite there. And I kind of quipped out this little humorous statement. And then I kind of, just in my own haste, looked at her in the eyes and said, "What about you? How are you? Are you happy?" It wasn't a challenging question, but it was a little bit insensitive. And when I looked into her eyes, you know how you look into someone's eyes and you see that they're blind. I put it together. She didn't see that I was a monk. She was blind, and Ukundala didn't tell me that his mother was blind. And I felt a little bit amiss that I had asked her this question, are you happy? Because navigating life without eyesight, what would it mean to slow down so sufficiently that you now have to occupy the magnificence of your inner sight without the ability to have anatomical sight. This type of reflection to awaken a greater sacredness to the immediacy of occupying consciousness and the senses. In the realm of the senses, bringing a poetic dharma, artful aesthetic. And she looked at me with sincerity and heartfulness and said, you know, I am very happy. Pause. How breathtaking it is for someone to say, under any circumstance, I'm happy. And you really want to ask that individual, what does happiness mean? It's like someone says, I really love you, or I'm in love with you. Thank you very much for the gift of your in-loveness. But what I'd like to ask is, what is it that you see that you're in love with, so that I can feel and appreciate more the dimensions of your own mind and heart in regard for you and me. Always curious to feel into the process of taking conditioned time out of conversation, not just physical movement. Slowing down in a conversation isn't just the slowing down of wonderment or curiosity or speech, but it's opening up spaces and possibilities. What does openness mean? It's taking time out of context. It's taking separation and judgment and blame and the ways in which we ricochet and bring a kind of emotional confinement to the space, openness, slowing down, ways to breathe. How often in meditation we were encouraged to let breathing breathe on its own. Let the in-breath fully come into one's body and mind. Let the out-breath fully descend and release from the body and the mind. Let the breathing breathe on its own accord, slowing down as the basis of basic sanity. Taking care of one's own inner environment with grace, with intelligence, with care, as you would touching your lover or caring for someone who's not well. You would anoint her forehead or lips with moisture if they had a fever or unable. You would just bring a heightened, compassionate, metta-infused, loving-kindness aesthetic to the space. And Ukundala's blind mother said, I'm very happy. She said to me, although I am blind, my friends are my eyes. They often talk with me about a sunrise or a sunset, what they see, and I begin to see how they describe those settings within my own mind. What a beautiful act of friendship to talk about a situation as if it were an organic painting, a moment in an existential museum, a Mona Lisa, a sculpture, a pyramid, an awakened insight, an epiphany, the renaissance of wonderment. How often we neglect opening up conversations because we're in some form of haste to get to a conclusion, and taking the forward movement out of eroticism, out of romance, out of sexuality. Yes, let's get naked, let's undress, let's lean back rather than forward, harder, faster, deeper, war through intimacy. the perpetual need to satisfy me on the needs of my unquestioned conditioning. We've all been there. We'll all do it and do it again. But in terms of bringing some meaning to me in the madness in a world in crises, these are the touchstones of basic sanity for me. Slowing down, just chilling with high regard for increased auditory, sensual, visual, oral, cognitive aesthetic. What does an aesthetic even mean to you? What is your colors of choice? What are your love language poetics? My friends tell me there are my eyes. And I have a well where I can bathe, Ukundala's blind mother told me. Although it's cold, she said, often in the winter months, but I am able to stay bathed and clean. Just the act of being in proximity to water. In reading about Sri Lanka today, thinking that I might go there, having once been a monk there, living in such sacred psychic environments, a failed nation, manufacturing chain decimated, fuel costs through the roof, people dying, people starving, people hungry, long line to get basic kerosene and cooking oils that have quadrupled, if not even gone higher in cost. Unthinkable dystopian circumstances. The same in Burma, in so many other places around the world, coexisting at this very moment. How to keep alive basic sanity, slowing down, making some sense of meaning within the madness. There's so many ways to speak about Dharma art. I'm not saying this is the only expression, the only theme, but if one can take the haste, the momentum, the anxiety, the stress out of doing, I really wish the world would just stop for a long 2 hours. Chill, open your mouth, put this psychedelic in, be massaged by the sacred divine. Just awaken, just meditate, feel and feel more the natural awakening of vulnerability by calling off the importance of ignorance and priority, that violence over peace is somehow important. The pornography of war right now in the media, the drumbeat of World War III, everyone I talk to, everyone you're speaking with is concerned. Are we in a circumstance of nuclear devastation, biological devastation, chemical devastation? Is there a future of life? Even taking into account catastrophic climate collapse, how many scientists and climate activists are talking about we are already in the 6th mass human-generated extinction, where multiplicities of other life forms will also go extinct. And as I read recently in Michio Kaku's book, The Great of Theoretical Physics from New York, in his book, The God Molecule, the God equation, talks about the simultaneity of this moment right now. Dimensions of our universe, galaxies, star systems, millions of light years in dimension, evaporating through collisions in space. Countless exoplanets likened to life on our Earth. It is now recognized among savant astronomers that we exist in a universe of populated life forms. How rad is that? simultaneity of deities and Brahmas, ghosts, and other life forms, and other human forms, some of them less developed, some of them far more developed. There's so much to occupy. And by slowing down isn't to go to sleep. It excites the deeper tendrils in the molecules, for me, of an awakened mind. I've had some of the most radical epiphanies in moments of sitting still, or simply just washing a dish mindfully, or eating rice quietly and mindfully, or walking barefoot on the beach or through a forest path, or simply looking at a flower opening over many days, watching a bird fly through space. I have all my medicines, she told me, Ukundala's blind mother. We have a wonderful indigenous medicine system in Burma. I have a bed and blankets to keep me warm. I have basic supplements and food at my disposal. And I'm thinking, my goodness, how special it is to encounter this person. What a teaching it is for someone to occupy with such beauty, such simplicity, the realm of the senses without eyesight, without the ear, without the nose, without mobility. And then my friend Ukundala came, hand in hand with an elderly gentleman, and he introduced me to his father. And Ukundala's mother in the bench, in between two elderly friends, you could sense psychically that she knew her son and husband had arrived and made room, and he sat down next to her. And you know how you can see things, and he held and she held each other's hand. And she looked at me with those blind, open-hearted eyes and said, "Love really helps," in response to, "Are you happy?" The simplicity of intimacy with self and other, learning how to overcome self-generated conflict, learning how to elevate the good, the true, the beautiful, and taking and questioning and interrupting the conditioned habit of anxiety and stress and this forward motion towards the coffin, towards the grave, towards the next, taking the watch and the clock off the soul. At times, not just sitting in meditation or doing one's yoga, but opening up space throughout the day to breathe and to feel and to cry and to listen to your heart's calling. What is it that I want to do today that's remarkable and beautiful that I haven't done? What do I want to say to the few people in my life that matter to me? Have you told them really how you feel? How you feel appreciative, the gratitude that you feel? There's so much that we can do with the poetry of shared space. Life is not a miracle only. It's a gift to anoint with conscious action. And sometimes that action is so spacious that you play together there in creative prose and rhymes and poetry. And the last thing I'd like to share today is my inspiration in life is manifold and multiple. But the Buddha is a great inspiration to me as vocation more than individual. There's something in the documentation attributed to the men and women at the time in ancient India, known as the Buddha and the Sangha of innermost women and men, each occupying, in a way, a unique expression of consciousness in high development. They each had specialties. And I've labeled that consortium, or that constellation of consciousness of beings embodied in a selected community, my samsaric sangha. I want to be in that level of choir, chorus, community, that level of existential human soiree of co-creative spaces. It's said that the Buddha was motivated by the development of 10 qualities of consciousness that he spoke about as the priority, the primacy of presence. A Dhamma savant is an individual who prioritizes these 10 qualities more so than everything else. Generosity, ethical intelligence, renunciation, wisdom, energy, patience, truthfulness, determination, loving kindness, and equanimity. Equanimity, loving kindness, determination, truthfulness, patience, energy, wisdom, renunciation, ethical intelligence or morality, and dana and generosity. 10 states, 10 cognitive energies, 10 colors of consciousness. I invite you, what are your 10 colors of preferred states of mind that you would choose to occupy in every given moment of interaction with self, with your friends, with your family, with your parents, with your children, with your plants, with your pet, with your body, with your mind, with your intimacy? Consciousness as primary over events. I have to go get gas. I have to go shop. I have to write the book. What you bring to the events are these 10 qualities of consciousness that the Buddha called the beautification of the mind, the 10 paramis, 10 states of excellence. What are yours? Know them. Become literate. Hello. It's just me. That's right. And make them primary over everything. And the final quality is, what were the 2 driving forces of life for the Buddha? Compassion, caring for others as primary of being. That's pretty rad. And in that caring for other, a heightened regard for the quality of your own caring, so that these 10 attributes of consciousness, these 10 paramis, are what you stand in, feel in. Let them occupy the radiance of your senses to beautify your process. But let compassion. I see you. I am here to do what I can to creatively elevate the happiness, the well-being, the safety, the sacredness, the opportunity of your life. You know, soon we'll all go extinct. It's going to happen. And think of how much money will be in the fossil fuel belt. I mean, everything that we do today is based upon organic life, trees and animals, bugs and insects that have lived and died and gone through the sediment into these gas fields and oil fields. The most organic substance on earth, we burn to heat and to mobilize, that through its own necessities desecrates the atmosphere, creates global warming, and is killing us. That's how organic life is. The very things that we use to sustain life kills life. My point is, there's so much money that will be left behind. It's not even funny as a Saturday Night Live skit. The priority of accumulation, in other words, compassion-driven generosity. It's amazing to me how the mind, when you preoccupy yourself with generosity, how you start off in a beggarly way of giving just a little things, and slowly you begin to work into greater things until eventually, I have seen, I'm not one of these people, I have been in circumstances of areas of extreme conflict and war where people are willing to lay down their lives to protect the safety and the future of someone else, even a stranger. I've had it done to me. It's amazing to me to be in a refugee camp or places of displaced people where people who know they do not know where the next meal will come will share their meal with you. They'll share their everything with you. Monasteries were very much like that. And occasionally in a lifetime, you'll meet someone who is really there to creatively, beautifully give as vocation. And that's why the Buddha was so inspiring to me. The compassion was driven, awakened by generosity, by caring for the upliftment of another. And the final quality, and I'll end today, is adventure. Despite the madness, right? Despite the hardships, right? Despite the breakdown of the body and our organs, despite it all, what does adventure mean to you? May I invite you, should you feel moved, take a little bit of time today, this week, and what does adventure mean to you simply by pointing to energies in life as you know them and write them down? What does it mean to go shopping as an adventure? What does it mean to take the fatigue out of conditioned activities and do things that are adventurous? Adventure into unknown areas that might awaken eyesight if you were blind, sound if you were deaf, mobility if you were unable to move, a renaissance of innocence and youthfulness if your body's in decay. Adventure gives life. Personally, I have never felt better. Knock on existential wall in wood, as it's so clear we're all going to die and we don't know when, and we're all going to deal with disease and uncertainty and we don't know when. We all know that discontinuity is our future and we don't know when. We all know that the earth that bakes us and tans us and grows our food will one day engulf our Mother Earth. There'll be nothing other than a vast astrophysical silence where there is this legacy of books and Amazon Prime and Whole Foods and wars. And every single memory will be lost or embedded in the psychic, karmic dictionary of timelessness. That is so far out, but so discernible and real. What is adventure? And make good on that promise. To me, that's a very beautiful way to slow down, not just slowing down, but occupying things. For me, when I do things from my heart and they have the vocation of my integrity, it takes the time out of it. I feel energized by it. When I meet people that I associate with that really bring something radical there, I lose fatigue. I'm regenerated, right? Meditation is that form, but coexistence is that form as well. And the high, beautiful, transformational awakening through purposeful, Dharma, adventurous art. Even the way in which we eat, the way in which we do yoga, the way in which we listen, the way in which we interrupt the habit of conditioning. So from my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow will be the final day in this series. God willing, 10 a.m. here from Sewell Studio in Haiku, Maui, Hawaii. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.